Look at your coworkers on the morning subway. Blurred silhouettes moving on autopilot beneath an invisible, yet absolutely real, chemical dome. The mass obsession with antidepressants, nootropics, and anti-anxiety drugs in the 21st century is most certainly not just the result of urban stress. Humanity's capacity for protest has been artificially multiplied by zero through ordinary prescription pads. Welcome to the age of the legal sterilization of will. Every day, screens tell us that the world has become too complex, too toxic, and that our minds simply cannot physically handle the pressure anymore. But behind this caring rhetoric lies cold calculation. The governments of leading nations have long entered into an unspoken pact with corporations like Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline, and Eli Lilly. Remember the official version. Medical progress has made it possible to detect hidden depression. Now look at the specific actions of the American Psychiatric Association. In 2013, they released the 5th edition of the DSM-5, the Bible of Global Psychiatry. And at that moment, the rules of the game changed forever. Diagnostic standards were deliberately expanded to the point of absurdity. Normal human sadness, grief after loss, or the shock of financial collapse suddenly became clinical diagnoses. Over the last 20 years, this bureaucratic maneuver has allowed up to 40% of the working-age population in developed countries to be placed on pharmaceutical support. Think about that number. Almost half of the economically active citizens of Europe and the United States take drugs every day that artificially regulate their neurotransmitters. Why do government regulators like the FDA so easily approve new classes of psychotropic substances while turning a blind eye to severe side effects and withdrawal syndromes? The answer lies in simple political economy. It is far cheaper for elites to pay for your pills than to solve the fundamental structural problems of society. Falling real incomes, relentless inflation, unaffordable housing, the destruction of pension savings. All of these are objective reasons for mass street protests. In any other historical era, this level of economic inequality would almost certainly have led to revolution or the overthrow of governments. But today, instead of building barricades, the dissatisfied citizen goes to a therapist who writes a prescription for escitalopram or sertraline through corporate insurance. It is the perfect system of soft chemical castration of the will. Drugs from the class of serotonin reuptake inhibitors artificially smooth out emotional peaks. They cut off not only deep sorrow, but righteous anger as well. A person loses the physiological ability to feel rage, the very biological mechanism that once forced people to fight for justice. You are no longer angry at the corrupt politician or the greedy employer. You feel only a flat, synthetic emptiness and a constant, heavy fatigue. It is this artificial fatigue that makes you the perfect cog in the modern system. You are too exhausted to strike, but functional enough to work in Excel spreadsheets. The ability to plan long-term, to think strategically about your own life, dissolves in a daily dose of mood stabilizers. You live from prescription to prescription, from one panic attack to the next dose of tranquilizer. And all the while, Big Pharma reports record quarterly profits. Let us look at the confidential reports of pharmaceutical lobbyists. Hidden inside them is a frightening correlation that primetime news networks never discuss. Peaks in prescriptions for antidepressants and antipsychotics coincide with periods of the harshest economic crises and mass layoffs with almost phenomenal precision. In 2008, when the mortgage bubble burst, millions of Americans were thrown into the street, Wall Street banks received trillions of dollars in government bailouts. And what did the population receive? Governments urgently subsidized psychological support programs, flooding the markets with tons of cheap, generic antidepressants. The anger of the betrayed working class was literally dissolved in a chemical cocktail. Instead of storming the offices of Lehman Brothers, people quietly slept in their financed cars. The very same scenario was played out during the recent global lockdowns. Economies were brought to a halt. Small businesses were destroyed by direct government orders. And in perfect sync with this, transnational pharmacy chains recorded historic growth in sales of anti-anxiety drugs by more than 30%. Corporations received unprecedented government contracts to supply medications for maintaining the so-called mental health of the nation. They call it a humanitarian mission, but in the language of geopolitical management, it is called the preventative suppression of rebellion at the cellular level. Pay attention to the aggressive, hidden advertising on social media. Algorithms deliberately target young people, persuading teenagers to search for signs of mental disorders in themselves. The industry is creating new, lifelong customers. If a person begins taking psychotropic drugs at 18, by the age of 30, their neuroplasticity changes irreversibly. They become physiologically dependent on a healthcare system fully controlled by the same investment funds that control their workplace. BlackRock and Vanguard hold major stakes in both pharmaceutical giants and the largest media corporations that normalize the culture of constant treatment. In fashionable series and blogs, the regular use of prescription drugs is presented as a sign of self-awareness, self-care, and high social status. Chemical shackles are cynically sold to you as personal growth, and you happily pay for them yourself at the pharmacy, enriching your own wardens. There is a secret directive among lobbying groups aimed at pushing prescription drugs into basic corporate insurance packages at the international level. Your manager smiles while offering you free consultations with a corporate psychiatrist. Not because the board of directors has suddenly become concerned about your personal happiness, but because the corporation needs an absolutely obedient unit, one that will not demand a pay raise or form a union, but will simply take its dose and sit back down at the monitor. The pharmaceutical dome above the megacities grows denser with every passing year. The industry is already moving toward the creation of smart capsules with microchips that track when a drug is taken. In 2017, regulators officially approved the first digital pill, Abilify MySite. It sends a signal to a smartphone confirming that you have taken the prescribed dose. The official goal is treatment adherence. The real prospect is a loyalty system, where refusing medication could lead to a lower social rating or dismissal from work. Imagine the noir aesthetic of our future. Giant, perfectly shaped, glossy pills falling over cities instead of rain. They dissolve into the culture. They pulse through your veins. This is not an abstract dystopia. It is the genius business model of the 21st century. The elites have realized that police batons, water cannons, and tear gas are too expensive and too toxic for the media. Why use physical violence against an enraged crowd if you can make sure that crowd never finds the strength to gather in the square at all? Why censor information harshly if millions of people are chemically unable to feel the motivation to analyze that information and begin to act? Willpower deficit syndrome is the most successful and profitable product of the pharmaceutical monopoly in its entire history. A product that cements the status quo for billionaires. They can move production offshore, crash national currencies, and ignite regional conflicts over control of supply chains with complete impunity. They know exactly that you will not take to the streets. Your emotional curve has been securely fixed by a doctor's prescription, paid for with your own taxes. And while you sit in the half-darkness of your apartment, listening to the muffled, oppressive ambient noise of the big city and feeling only a thick, synthetic calm, in the boardrooms of transnational corporations, record dividends are being distributed. They have monetized your depression, bought your anger, and sold you chemical oblivion at a premium. The infrastructure of suppression has already been physically embedded into your body. You were convinced that your brain was broken, when in reality, it is the financial and social system around you that is broken. The sterilization of protest has been successfully completed. The trap has snapped shut, and the keys to it now lie in the safes of investment funds alongside classified patents for new generations of tranquilizers. The next time you swallow your morning capsule for productivity or anxiety relief, ask yourself one simple question. Who is this drug really treating? You or those who control you?